Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
Let's bring in Donnie Collins, Scranton Times-Tribune. Donnie, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Doing great. It's great to hear your voice, by the way.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been too long, as far as I'm concerned. General impressions. This April's always interesting between spring football, the blue-white scrimmage, and now with the transfer portal, which came to a close on Sunday. You may get a trickle out because of the 48-hour thing maybe today, but what's just your general thought of where the program is?
I think they're in great shape. I think anybody would and should say that. I thought the blue-white game, one thing that really interested me is I thought, not only was it a legitimate game format, but I think it was a legitimate game for a guy like Drew Aller to go out there and have to face some of those defensive schemes that he saw. They came after him, and a pretty good offensive line had some issues with some defensive ends who had a good game and a coming out party, and that's a position of strength for Penn State. And I think that's going to be good for Aller because you could argue that how many defenses is he going to see this year that are as good as the one he saw in the blue-white game? Probably not too many. I mean, maybe 5 or 6. But yeah, it's going to be fun to see him progress this year. And I think Penn State's got a lot of depth now on certain positions on defense. Certainly they need to improve in some areas, but that's every team this time of year. So I think this coming out of the blue-white game, they know now what they need to fix. And, look, I mean, are they going to be able to do it through the transfer portal? Are they going to have to develop those guys this summer? Probably a little bit of both. Probably more develop those guys that they have on the roster. But I think in the blue-white game we saw some guys who didn't get too many people talking about them. Denai Dennis Sutton, Zariah Fisher. I thought, both those guys played very well, and I think moving forward that you saw there's enough hope with those young guys to think that with what Penn State has, they could be pretty good in the fall.
Now the portal there, James Franklin and his staff have done really an outstanding job over the years of filling what they perceive to be as maybe a gap here or there. What are those potential 1 or 2 gaps that could help them out in the portal?
Yeah, I think they've been as good as anybody in the portal, really. I mean, outside of just going and getting everybody that you could find and being, a program that is going to just, build teams for the portal. They're not going to do that. But I think if you're looking at positions, James mentioned defensive tackle. You can go find a couple of guys there and help build that rotation there. But receiver is another spot that he's mentioned going out and getting. That's a tough one for me because I think you have so many guys on your roster, and I think some of them could play, and some of them, what Amari Evans did in the blue-white game didn't surprise me. They really talked highly of him and Taylor Stubblefield when he was the receivers coach last year. I asked him about Evans, and he basically said, it's just going to take him a little bit of time. He was a high school quarterback. Everybody knows kind of the backstory there, but I think he came out and played well. But I thought Saunders played well too, and that was important.
Yeah, so, I agree.
James kind of mentioning receiver, I think that I don't want to say that's a luxury at this point because he knows, he sees them every day. But I think that they can get by with what they've got at receiver. But I think whenever you can get better in the trenches, you get better in the trenches. So get some defensive linemen if you can, maybe an offensive lineman if the right guy is there, and that's kind of the guys they've been offering. But not many people ever mention special teams. I'd see what I can get there as far as kickers. I don't know about the punting situation. I think Thompson. He evidently had a 62-yarder in the blue-white game. I don't remember it, but that doesn't surprise me that I don't remember a punt from a game. But I think they're going to have to get better on special teams. That's one thing we learned out of the blue-white game too. So maybe they hit that in the portal. But really, right now, I would think get better in the trenches if you can, and I think they'll do that. and see what they could hit from there.
What's interesting is the college football playoff announced today the dates and what they're doing. They announced today that once they get to the 24 season, first round games will be at campus sites on Friday, December 20th, 1 game, and then 3 games on Saturday, the 21st. The quarterfinals, the Fiesta Bowl, will be on the 31st and 24. Then New Year's Day, it'll be the Peach Bowl, Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl. Semifinals will be the Orange and Cotton on the 9th on a Thursday, and Monday night, the 20th, in Atlanta is the championship game. Then in 25, it's Friday the 19th, Saturday the 20th. Quarterfinals will be Wednesday the 31st at the Cotton Bowl, Thursday the 1st, Orange, Rose, Sugar. Semifinals on the 8th, Fiesta Bowl, Peach Bowl, because they're going to keep that rotation. And then the 20th of January in Miami will be the championship game. Now we're going to see the college football season end on January 20th.
Yeah, it's late. it's almost as long as a college or as an NFL season. If you want to, you're really pushing the conference championship games really. By the time you're wrapping up, it's a long season, and I mean, I get it. It's a long season for 4 teams. Realistically, so it's a shorter season, I guess, for most of the teams. If depending on what the rest of the bowl structure is going to look like, and 4 of the 12 teams are going to be eliminated that first weekend.
Right.
So I'm sure their season ends that way, but yeah, it's going to be a long football season. And the other thing I find interesting is you're playing how many of your games there? 6 of your biggest games of the year aren't on Saturdays, and most of them are midweek.
And
I
again,
want to see how that plays out.
And again, that's the NFL. The NFL has forced them to do this.
Yeah, and the other side of that coin is I sit here and complain that they don't have a lot of college football games on Saturdays, but that first weekend where you're playing those 3 games, the early afternoon, late afternoon, and primetime game in the first round, that's going to go up against NFL games.
Yes.
So it's going to be.
That's why
I think it's going to be very fun to see how those ratings go.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting too, because what I find interesting is that, look, the NFL acts like they don't need anybody. And maybe in reality they don't, but I think they do need college football. And the reason they need it is Bryce Young's already, quote, an established star coming into the league. The NFL doesn't have to mold him into a star. College football does that for them.
Yeah, correct. I mean, look at last weekend. Look at the draft. I mean, it's the best minor league system in the world, and it's not really even a minor league system. You look at it, and people are tuning in from Thursday night until late Saturday afternoon for the draft to see these guys get picked, and they know most of them. They do scouting reports on them. They watch the combine to see these guys. Fans don't get enough football, and I think the lines for fans are blurred between college and the professional ranks, and they're going to continue to get even blurrier for obvious reasons. But really, yeah, this is, Bryce Young last year was playing most of the year for Alabama, but how many NFL teams wanted him? How many NFL fans are thinking that guy could change our fortunes? And and that is part of the lure of college football now. That's somebody who you heard the tank for Tua stuff a couple of years ago. As ridiculous as that is, that's a lot of the reason why NFL fans are watching college football now is how could these guys help me?
On the world-famous speaking tour, the stop this weekend was in South Carolina. 2/3 of my questions from the audience dealt with either the transfer portal or more with NIL. Mm-hmm. Donnie, what kind of feel do you have for NIL? Seriously. That's what I've had.
It's a great question. I do a podcast every week now, and I have people come every week to a certain degree. We talk about NIL, and every week I mention the same thing. I don't know anything. I know what it's about. I know what it is. I know the impact it's going to have, and I guess that's a lot because when you see what kids are getting now, what they're expecting, but once you learn something about NIL, it changes 3 weeks later. So it's very difficult to kind of get the grasp on it, and I think it's difficult for fans, which is why you get a lot of questions about it. Hey, how is I get every once in a while, what are they paying Drew Aller this year? I don't know. I know that Drew Aller can go and make a nice living being Drew Aller if he can, but I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what it is, and there's a lot of misconceptions about what it's going to be, but it's going to change everything, and it already has, obviously, and that's why James is, 90% of what he does now is pound the table for what this means for his program.
Yeah, no, and people are asking because they want to know. And I know that Penn State has been as high as third in endowed scholarships. And I said, I don't know, maybe you need to shift over to NIL because of the current. And look, you and I both know, everybody thinks everybody's making a lot of money. A few guys are. Most of the guys are like, oh, great, I get to go over to the local restaurant and they're going to give me a little bit of money to sit there and sign autographs. I'll go.
Yeah.
That's what most of it is.
Yeah, it's NIL to me. It's not the star basketball. What's her name at LSU who got the Mercedes deal over the weekend? It's Don DeLuca gets to go to Garrity's and sell some pasta sauce. Yeah. And that's really what it is. And last year in Scranton they had over the summer, and this I think this is a really good example of what NIL could be. Sean Clifford and his with Limitless and those guys, he had a whole group of Penn State players come up. Jair Brown was there, DeLuca, Curtis Jacobs was there, Parker. But they did a big camp. Hundreds of kids showed up, and it was free, and they did this big camp for everybody. It was a really positive experience, and a lot of those guys are in the NFL now. Parker's in the NFL. Cliff is, Cliff with the Packers, and it was just this great event. And I was there. My kids went to it, and I thought, this is something they would not have been able to do 5 years ago.
Right.
And
they do that.
It does enable kids to when you think about it, like Sean Clifford couldn't run a camp because it was against the rules.
Right. And now they can do that. And if Old Forge Pizza wants to bring some guys up, they're like, hey, great, I'll go. I'll go.
It is funny because there's still some there's still some rules that I didn't. You learn something new about it every day, because I was talking earlier with Mike Rosigno from the Scranton chapter, and Mike, you're going to be up for the dinner, I guess, in June. But I said, because they were looking for speakers, and I said, why don't you just pay one of the players? And they still can't pay the players.
Right,
still
they can't
the
do
rules
it
for them.
It's against the rules. They can't do it.
Yeah, so I don't know who could pay what and why, and I think they just change every week. So there's some really good things about it, is what I know, and it's great for the players, but the rules to me still very confusing.
Yeah. So that means you're stuck with Mike Rhodes and me. So that's that's what it ends up being on June the 8th. Right.
Yeah. Well, we're looking forward to it. But it's always a fun dinner. But I've never met Mike Rhodes, obviously. So
you'll like him. Oh no, you'll like him, Donnie. He's an impressive guy. He's just a good, down to earth guy. You'll like him a lot. He's our kind of guy.
Yeah, I've heard too that he was an outstanding Division III basketball player. The people at the University of Scranton say they've seen him and they remember him as almost legendary at that level.
Yeah, and with Lebanon Valley with Pat Flannery as the coach. And was it to be the Scranton Royals?
Yes.
The University of Scranton Royals.
Yeah, I remember Martelli played there for 2 years.
Yeah, Mike got 2 years up there. They were like the big deal all the time. Everybody talked about it. In fact, I'm going to be up in the old Lehman campus on Friday, as a matter of fact. So looking forward to it. Yeah. No, it's commencement weekend, and my buddy Rick Berry's giving the commencement speech, so they wanted to do something. So I said, okay, cool, I'll go. What the heck? There's no games this weekend. I'm good.
Yeah.
And I'm free for podcasts. And I'm free for podcasts too, Donnie. So we're all good. All right. Donnie, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Steve.